In a shocking turn of events that left the entire city buzzing, a Miami police officer thought he could bully a young black girl by seizing her father's luxury car, assuming she had stolen it. Little did he know that his actions would have life-changing consequences. Within minutes, this officer would find himself in a desperate situation, pleading for forgiveness. What happens next is something you won't believe. Breonna Davis, an 18-year-old high school senior, sat behind the wheel of her father's Tesla Model S, the leather seats cool against her skin despite the warm Miami sun. She had been floating on Cloud 9 since yesterday when she received her acceptance letter to Princeton University, her dream school. Her excitement still bubbled up inside her, a sense of achievement she had worked hard for. The Tesla glided effortlessly through the sun-drenched streets of Coral Gables, an affluent neighborhood known for its mansions and pristine lawns. The soft hum of the electric engine was the only sound as Breonna's thoughts drifted to her future. College, new friends. The possibilities seemed endless. She smiled to herself as she passed rows of palm trees and luxury homes. Everything about the day felt perfect. Her father, Colonel Anthony Davis, a retired Marine with a distinguished career, had handed her the keys earlier that morning with pride in his eyes. "Go out, celebrate, you've earned it," he'd said, giving her a rare day to drive the car he so rarely let anyone else touch. It was a gift to mark her accomplishment, a recognition of her hard work and dedication. Breonna thought about how proud her father had been when she showed him the letter from Princeton. "You did it," he'd whispered, hugging her tight, his eyes moist with emotion. Now, as she drove his car down the tree-lined streets, she felt on top of the world. Life couldn't be better. But as she neared a stoplight, something in her rearview mirror caught her attention. Flashing blue and red lights. Startled, Breonna glanced at her speedometer. She wasn't speeding, hadn't run any lights, and the car was in perfect condition. Confused, she carefully pulled over to the side of the road, her heart beginning to pound in her chest. The flashing lights belonged to a Miami police cruiser that quickly parked behind her. As she took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves, a heavy-set officer stepped out of the cruiser. Officer James O'Connor, a veteran cop known for his unyielding and often harsh demeanor, strode up to Breonna's window. His gaze was hard, his lips a thin line of judgment as he stared at her. Without even offering a greeting, he barked, "License and registration." "Of course, officer," Breonna said politely, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her purse for her license. "May I ask why I was pulled over?" O'Connor barely glanced at her as he snatched the documents from her hands. His eyes swept over the sleek car, then back to Breonna. "This car's registered to an Anthony Davis," he said, his tone accusatory. "Who is that?" Breonna smiled nervously, trying to remain calm. "That's my father. He let me borrow the car today. I just got accepted to Princeton and we were celebrating." O'Connor cut her off with a dismissive snort. "Yeah, right. Step out of the vehicle." Breonna's heart lurched. "Excuse me, officer? I'm telling you the truth. You can call my father. I said, step out of the car." O'Connor's voice rose, the hand resting on his belt sending a clear message. This wasn't a request. It was a demand. Reluctantly, Breonna unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out of the car, her legs shaking as she stood on the sidewalk. Officer O'Connor eyed her with suspicion, and it was clear he had already made up his mind. In his eyes, she was guilty, regardless of what she said. To him, a young black girl driving a luxury car was enough reason to assume the worst. O'Connor grabbed Breonna's arm roughly and spun her around, forcing her to place her hands on the hood of the car. "Turn around! Hands on the car!" he barked. Breonna's heart raced as her mind struggled to comprehend what was happening. She hadn't done anything wrong. Why was she being treated like this? Her pulse quickened as she glanced around. A few pedestrians had stopped, watching the scene unfold, their faces filled with a mixture of concern and confusion. "Officer, please," Breonna begged, her voice trembling. "There's been a mistake. Just call my father." "Shut up," O'Connor growled as he slapped the cold metal cuffs onto her wrists. "You're in serious trouble now, Missy. This car is getting impounded. You're coming with me." Tears stung Breonna's eyes as the cuffs dug into her skin. Her perfect day had turned into a nightmare. Her father's car, a symbol of his pride in her accomplishments, was being hauled away, and she was powerless to stop it. As the tow truck arrived, flashing its lights, she could feel the humiliation burning into her soul. She was being treated like a criminal for no reason other than the color of her skin. Desperation clawed at Brianna as she managed to fish her phone out of her pocket with shaking hands. She dialed her father's number, praying he would pick up. "Dad, Dad, I need your help," she choked out when he answered. "They think I stole your car." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Colonel Davis's voice came through, steady but filled with a barely controlled rage. "Where are you?" he asked. "I'm near Coral Gables," Brianna replied, tears streaming down her face. "Stay there, I'm coming," Colonel Davis said, and Brianna could hear the sound of him grabbing his keys and rushing out the door. Minutes later, the deep rumble of a black SUV announced Colonel Anthony Davis's arrival. He stepped out of the car, his towering figure cutting an imposing silhouette as he marched toward Officer O'Connor. His sharp military posture spoke volumes. This was a man who commanded respect. O'Connor, who had been smugly watching the tow truck, froze as Colonel Davis approached. It took him a moment, but he recognized the man in front of him, a man who had worked closely with law enforcement agencies during his military career, a man known for his unwavering discipline and integrity. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," Colonel Davis growled, his voice low and deadly calm. O'Connor's face paled. "Colonel Davis, I didn't know." "You didn't bother to ask," Colonel Davis snapped, stepping closer until he was inches from the officer's face. "Unlock those cuffs, now." O'Connor scrambled, his hands shaking as he unlocked the cuffs and removed them from Brianna's wrists. The officer, who had moments ago been brimming with arrogance, was now visibly trembling under the weight of his mistake. The bystanders, who had been recording the scene on their phones, were now whispering amongst themselves, some murmuring in shock. Colonel Davis pulled Brianna into a protective embrace, gently rubbing her shoulders. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice softening as he looked at her with concern. Brianna nodded, though her body still trembled from the shock of it all. Officer O'Connor stood frozen, realizing the gravity of what he had done. The crowd had grown larger, their phones still recording, and the situation was spiraling out of his control. Colonel Davis had connections in every corner of Miami's legal and political world, and O'Connor knew that his career was now hanging by a thread. As the tow truck driver prepared to leave with the Tesla, Colonel Davis raised a hand, signaling him to stop. "That car isn't going anywhere," he said. The driver, recognizing the authority in his voice, immediately complied. "I'm filing a formal complaint," Colonel Davis told O'Connor coldly. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers, and believe me, this won't be swept under the rug." O'Connor could do nothing but nod weakly, his confidence completely shattered. The weight of his actions had finally dawned on him. In a matter of minutes, he had gone from being in control to standing on the verge of losing everything. The next day, footage of the incident had spread like wildfire across social media. Miami was outraged. The city was buzzing with anger and disbelief, and calls for action against Officer O'Connor grew louder by the hour. Civil rights groups, community leaders, and activists quickly rallied around Brianna's story, demanding justice and police reform. Colonel Davis, true to his word, filed a lawsuit against the Miami Police Department, pushing for systemic changes to address racial profiling. The case would later lead to widespread reforms in how police officers were trained to handle traffic stops and engage with citizens. As for Officer O'Connor, his name became synonymous with disgrace. Public outcry led to his suspension, and he would later resign from the Miami Police Department in shame. The once proud officer was now a symbol of the broken system he had blindly served, a reminder of how deeply prejudice could affect those who were supposed to protect and serve. For Brianna, the experience was both traumatic and eye-opening. While it had left emotional scars, it also ignited a fire in her to fight for justice. With her father's support and the backing of the community, she became a leading voice in Miami's movement for police reform, speaking out about racial profiling and injustice. Weeks later, Brianna stood before a crowd at a community event organized to address the changes needed in the police force. Her voice was clear, steady, and strong as she shared her experience with the hope that it would lead to a better future. The applause that followed was thunderous, a powerful acknowledgement of the strength it had taken for her to speak out. "I don't want anyone else to go through what I did," Brianna said in her speech. "We can and must do better. Together, we can make sure no one is judged by the color of their skin before they even have a chance to speak." Colonel Davis watched his daughter from the side of the stage, pride swelling in his chest. What had started as a nightmare had transformed into a mission for justice, not just for his family, but for all those who had experienced the same prejudice Brianna had faced that day. Miami, now at the center of national attention, found itself at a crossroads. Protests were held demanding greater accountability from the police force, and the media continued to cover the fallout from the incident. But alongside the protests came hope. Brianna's story was inspiring change. The city council passed new laws requiring police officers to undergo racial sensitivity training, and the community began rebuilding its trust in the justice system. Brianna's voice, once silenced by the fear and humiliation of that fateful traffic stop, had now become a powerful tool for change. She was invited to speak on local news outlets, participate in town hall meetings, and her story became a symbol of resilience against the deeply rooted prejudice that too many in America still faced. Months later, as Brianna prepared to leave for Princeton, she and her father sat together in the same Tesla that had been the centerpiece of her ordeal. The car, once a painful reminder of that horrible day, now represented her strength and perseverance. "Are you ready for the next chapter, sweetheart?" Colonel Davis asked as they pulled up to Miami International Airport. Brianna smiled, glancing at her father. "I think I am, Dad." The journey ahead was uncertain, but Brianna knew she was ready. She had faced injustice head-on and turned it into a force for good. As they hugged goodbye, Colonel Davis whispered, "I'm proud of you, Brianna. You're going to change the world." And as she boarded the plane, heading toward her future, Brianna felt a sense of peace. Her story had not ended with that traffic stop. It was just beginning.